Hello YouTube, Chrome Freak here. Okay, the disassembly of the Romanian SAR2, the 545 by 39 AK, and I have the honor and privilege and surprise of having John with me here today to help me do this. I had planned to do this video this weekend on my own. However, John had the time and stopped by, and here we are, and this is going to be great, and I'm pleased to have him. And step in or talk anytime you want, John.
Sure. Well, Chrome Freak, thank you so much for having me back. This video is for all the people who might want to see a detailed disassembly and reassembly of this gun. And we're talking right down to the fire control group, because we had done that for our milled receiver comparison. We had it all together, then through the magic of stopping the camera and just taking it apart, suddenly for you folks it was apart, and Mike thought it might be a great video to do this for you. Again, regarding that last video, I'd like to thank all the people who are writing in real positive comments, the discussion about the finished guns, and did a little bit of homework regarding that, and turns out that the Finns have actually in their M90 series and M95 series of rifles have gone back to a milled receiver. They think it works better in the extreme cold weather that they have up there. So again, you know, when considering where you're at, if you're in Alaska, you might want a milled receiver gun versus a stamp receiver gun. But a lot of people just keep asking point blank, you know, which one is better? And the bottom line is that they're both fantastic guns, and they can be made to shoot very well and can be both a lot of fun to own. So I really think it just, again, it comes down to your budget, it comes down to aesthetics, and it depends on what you want to actually build. If you want to do a Romanian type AK74 rifle like the AIM-74 here, you're not going to go out and get a milled receiver to start with, because the country of origin, the proper rifle to start with here is a stamp receiver gun. So again, you know, budget, remilitarization, aesthetics, those are what it boils down to. Just pick your poison and go for it.
Okay guys, with that said, as nice as this stamp receiver firearm is, I wish it was milled. And I'm in Florida. It's not that cold here.
That's great.
Anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. And the first thing I'm going to, well, I'll let John explain it as I go, and I'll try to slow down here so I don't go too fast.
I'm going to talk for Chrome Freak here. Step number one, we're going to take the cleaning rod out, but before we do that, or after we've done it in this case, now let's do a quick safety check. So let's pull that back, and we're clear. And when we disassemble an AK, we actually want that hammer in the back position. So let's do that again. So now that she's right there, let's go ahead and stay put. Now at the back of the gun here, protruding through the rear cover, is the end of the recoil spring guide assembly, and it's got a nice knurled or textured surface on it, and that is actually so that you can get your thumb on that, and you're going to want to depress that so it's flush or slightly inside the rear cover. And once you do that, you simply lift the rear cover free of it, and that's step number one. The next step is to remove the recoil spring assembly, and that sits in a dovetail at the rear stock trunnion. And to do that, you need to slide that forward. It's under spring tension.
Push it
forward
in,
until it's clear. Lift up and out. Step number two. The next step is to remove the bolt and bolt carrier, and that's simply done by moving that to the rear. And there are some cutouts back here in the stamped receiver where it's widened here. This rolled edge has been taken away, and that's to facilitate clearing this area right here. This is the rail and guiding the bolt here. That comes right out past that area there. So you get back to that point, lift out, and you're done. And then the last thing to do is to rotate the bolt free of the bolt carrier. And to do that, all we need to do is turn the bolt.
It can be a little tricky at times.
No, it's not a little tricky. Why won't it just rotate? There we go. Move it backwards, rotate it.
Because we're on camera, John.
I know, exactly. And she comes right out. Last in the field stripping process is to simply remove the gas tube in the upper handguard. There's a lever right on the rear sight base that just comes up, and this activates a little cam. And with this lever perfectly in the vertical position, there's a flat face in here that allows the lip of the gas tube right here to pass by that surface, thus freeing it. So you simply just lift it out, and that's all there is to it. And so now we're field stripped. Okay. This would be the condition the rifle would be in for basic field cleaning. This is all we need to do.
But we're going to go ahead and we're going to take it a step further. We're going to go for a detailed here. So I'll tell you what I'll do. Since I'm standing right here, I'll go ahead and I'll take the front foregrip off, and then I'll give it over to John. And we're going to try to make this quick. We're going to make it a two-part. The reassembly will be a separate video. And I know some people don't like long ones, so we're going to try to make it quick. Simply take a flat-headed screwdriver. I'll let you go ahead and explain it, John.
Yeah, with a flathead screwdriver, there is a little lever, and you can see that it passes through the front handguard assembly right here. There's a curved surface. I hope we can see it on camera. Right here, there's the end of the lever. It's got it's pressed through, so it's opened up on the back side here, so it will rotate. We just need to lift that lever straight up. And sometimes it can be a little bit sticky, but this one's not too bad. So we go straight up, and then once we get just past the vertical position, it really gets loose. It just wants to lay over on its side. Once you've got it right there, you should be able to wiggle this forward, which is your front handguard retainer.
That can be tight.
And you'll see that pin actually sits in a cut in the barrel right here. So once we've got that forward, front handguard comes right out like that. And there's that area we saw in the receiver again here in the front. That's where the cleaning rod recesses and where the stump on the back side.
Bring it down a little bit, it's a
into.
little high. But right here is the area John's speaking of.
Okay. I'm glad you double checked that.
Yeah, I hope we weren't out of the camera.
I hope we're not out of
Yeah,
camera.
I hope we weren't. If we were, I'll try to edit something back in showing what we missed. Hopefully we didn't miss anything here.
We'll try
And
to
I'm
stay,
gonna tell you what I'm gonna do here. I'm gonna kind of take the camera off the tripod so you guys can get a closer look. And hopefully the lighting is good enough here. Still, once again, not the best, but I'm hoping it's good enough that you're gonna be able to see what we're doing, what John's doing.
All right, on most stamped receiver guns, there are two screws that secure your rear stock, whether they're wood or in this case a side folder. One of the screws sits flush below the dovetail in the rear trunnion for the recoil assembly, and the other one is right at the back of the stock tank. It doesn't matter what order you take these out in, but to remove your stock, you just need to get in there and unscrew them. And you know, I'll tell you what, guys, go out and get yourself a good set of screwdrivers. Use something where the blade is wide enough to get in here on these screws, because you don't want to strip them out.
Yeah, you could buy gunsmithing screwdrivers fairly cheap from Cabela's or any of the big stores. You guys know kind of how I feel about it. I'll use screwdrivers like John's using right there, and if it's something that's real delicate or I do not want to scratch, I will use Teflon tape wrapped around the tip. It'll work, but you're better off spending the $20, $30 on a fairly decent set of gunsmithing screwdrivers.
Okay, the screws are actually for this particular stock are different length. Short one in the back, long one in through the dovetail and the trunnion. Once you've got that done, your stock simply slides off, and that's all there is to it.
This is you guys kind of can see where Kalashnikov is going with this. It's a very easy and simple
Oh, it's fantastic.
design.
So, last thing to get out of here is the pistol grip. Most pistol grips have got a screw right through the base of them right there. So again, using the appropriate size screwdriver, all you need to do is loosen that up. Now, the screw does pass all the way through here, and there is a retainer in the base of the receiver here, so that just doesn't rattle around. I always like to just stick my finger in there just to hold it. And then,
Very, very easy, and you'll see exactly what he's talking about when you open up your AK. And if you guys have any questions about anything we're doing here, please, we love the comments. Please ask.
screw out. Pistol grip comes off. Now, here's this retainer. It just drops through a hole that's been cut out in the stamped sheet steel receiver right here. Now, it's important to take a look at how this goes, because I'll tell you what, I'll screw this up 100 frickin' times, but look at the orientation of it. It is angled towards the back of the receiver. If I can do this, you can actually get it in there wrong where it's angled towards the...
Yeah.
No, it's probably angled the same way, so I didn't quite do it. But you can get it in there backwards. Worst case scenario is, you know, you're taking this thing out and you're putting it back in again, because I get it wrong 100 friggin' times.
Yeah, you're not going to hurt nothing.
Exactly. I mean, it's just your pistol grip don't go on. So anyways, so now that's rattling around in there, you can just have it fall right out the back of the receiver. Done.
Sorry about the camera shaking, but I'm wanting to get some good shots here, and it looks like the lighting's a lot better, at least what I'm seeing through the screen here, than we had the other day. So.
Right. Now, fire control group. Again, here we go on camera.
On this side.
Yeah, it's like I said, you can practice this 100 times. Hopefully, we're going to do this really good.
Now, obviously, your hands are going to be in the way of some things. However, you know, we'll explain it as we're going here. I'll let John do it because he's doing it. And
What
when you're looking at it and he's telling you what to do, it's going to come to you a whole lot better than the way it's going to sound. But just watch what he's doing and listen, and what you can't see, you'll understand when you're looking at
when you're looking in your own gun, it's a bit easier. But the fire control group to this thing is really, really easy. We have a hammer right now, which is in the cock position. This is the face of the hammer, and you can see where it's been shined up here from striking the firing pin in the rear of the bolt. This is one of the claws that capture the hammer face and hold it back while the gun is cycling. Then there are two types of hammer. There are two types of triggers actually. There's one with a single claw like this, and there's one with they call it the double claw because there's an identical claw on the other side. This particular one is a single claw trigger. This thing right here is actually the sear, and then we've got the cross bolt safety right here. So it's hammer, trigger, sear, safety, and that's all we really need to worry about. So to start with here, to get this fire control group apart, your safety will actually rotate up to the safe position, and it will rotate past the safe position. Actually, I'm sorry, let me do this because it's actually best to start with this with the hammer down. So I'm going to stick my finger, this is under a lot of spring tension. So what I do is I stick my finger in here and I push this down. I put enough weight on it to push it down and free it off the back of that claw. Then I pull the trigger, let the claw come forward, and then just gently, and believe me, that's under spring tension, just gently let that hammer come forward.
Yeah, you don't want to fly. Like on most firearms I strip, I tell you guys that. Don't let the hammer fly forward if you can help it.
I mean, yeah, you can't. It's really
Probably
not going to hurt anything. But the problem is if you've got your finger there and you're not ready for it, you pull the trigger, it's going to bite you. So
M1 Garand though.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
So now back to the safety. We rotate the safety up to the safe position. We can actually over-rotate the safety forward, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky because you'll notice that the pawl on the safety starts to hit the backside of the sear here. So we need to clear that, and the easiest way to do that is just to press the sear down, and that safety will rotate right past it just like that. And you hear a little click. What that means is that has freed itself from the other side of the receiver where it's captured, and that's all there is to it. And folks, this is it right here on your safety. This is what makes your safety safe. This area of metal here, when the safety is rotated in the safe position, rides over the end of the trigger right here, the tail of the trigger where this trigger spring is located, and it rides over the top of it and it holds it down so that the trigger cannot be pulled. You hear that little click, 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 click? That's where you're coming up and you're hitting that chunk of metal on your safety. So it just sits right on top there.
This is the piece he's talking
about. That's the piece I'm talking about right there. And it prevents the trigger from rotating forward and essentially being pulled. That's all that's stopping you from squeezing off a round when you've got one chambered and you're on safety. So now that our safety's out, the easiest thing to start with is actually getting the trigger and the sear out of there. Now, coming off the hammer, there is this wound spring that there are two tails on this spring that run along the receiver in here, and they've got little feet on the end of them, and they lock over the back of the trigger. All you need to do is reach in there, and believe me, it's very forgiving. You just need to lift and get these kind of guys out of the way.
Now once again, don't be afraid. You're really not going to hurt anything as long as you're not bending them up.
Yeah.
Or reaching in there with a set of dikes and cutting them. You're not going to hurt anything.
Yeah, you're not going to hurt anything. And you know what? If they want to be stubborn like they're being right now, fine, I'll just leave them right there. Because you know what? Whether they're over that or whether they're not over that, then really what we need to do is we need to get the trigger access pin out of there. Here's a trigger access pin right here. Right now it's flush with the side of the receiver, so it's set in here. This is probably the most difficult part of the disassembly right here. I know because of the camera we're not going to see this too well, but there is a hairpin, which is just a piece of metal, a thin piece of metal that's bent, and it sits inside the left-hand side of the receiver here, and its job is to ride in two grooves that are cut on the fat side of this pin here. This side of the pinhole, once we get it out, you're going to see here it's bigger than this side. This is a 5mm hole, this is a 7mm hole, and the shank of the pin is actually fatter here, and it's got a groove cut in it, and this spring retains the pin by sitting in the groove. So what I've got to do, I've got to get in there and I've got to depress that retaining spring, and it's just a little metal thing, and get it free of its groove in the pin. And once I've got it depressed and down, I can then simply reach on this side of the weapon, and I should actually just be able, using finger pressure, to get that pin started to remove. Now I've got it pressed down. See that? See how that pin started to move? I should actually be free.
You will.
Yep, you should be able to see it now, because I just got my finger in there enough. And now it is no longer flush. It is slightly recessed into the side of the receiver.
Yes.
That's it. We're clear. We're done. So we can take anything, this punch for example, and start to work this pin out of the gun.
Which can be a chore.
Yeah, this might be a little bit of fun.
In fact, you might have to bring the hammer into play here.
Yeah, I was hoping I wouldn't have to, but
I can get you. I'm going to pause this real quick just to get something to rest that I can rest on.
Pistol
Actually,
grip.
we got something. We don't have to pause. There you go.
there we go. Now, I want to warn you that in your sear here, it is under spring tension. So once we get this pin moving a little bit more, I'm going to stick my finger back in there to
You know,
kind of
I
hang
knew
on
that
to it.
I knew that American-made pistol grip would come in handy.
Yeah, really, exactly.
Don't get me wrong, I love American-made, but you know, not on my Russian firearm. Or I'm sorry, in this case, Romanian.
There she went. All right, now we're in business. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my finger over the sear so that when I do get this pin out of here, and believe me, and watch this, folks. I mean, oh, I just pulled it out. I mean, once you get it started with the punch and you get it free of that receiver, it's good to go. Now again, that sear is under spring tension, so I'm just going to lift it out of there real gently, and there's a spring. Now, how do we do that? My God, because you know your spring, you just got to come flying out of there. Well, we cheated. Last time we reassembled this, we put a good heavy gob of grease in that hole there where that pin sits in there.
It's not rocket science. We'll show you that on
right.
reassembly
So that's hanging on to it, and we don't have to drive ourselves completely nuts.
Yeah, and with any firearm, you will spend time on your hands and knees looking for a spring.
Ain't that the truth? So now I'm gonna get this hammer spring tails out of the way. They didn't want to cooperate with me earlier. Fine and dandy, don't care. We're just gonna lift them out of the way, and then oh my God, look at that! We got a single claw trigger out of there. You can get a good look now at this hairpin, and you can
point it this direction a little bit. There you go.
Good look now at this hairpin, and how this is properly installed here. And how this worked is that this pin, to properly goes over the hairpin, and then it's under spring tension now because it's over the hairpin, and that when the pin is placed all the way through the receiver. Here's the groove in the 7mm portion of the pin shank where that hairpin rests in, and that's on the inside of the receiver. So now that can't walk back out, and it's just that simple. Now that the trigger's out of there, the hairpin is really easy to deal with. All I'm doing is using my finger to push it straight back out of the receiver, and it's going to come exactly right out of the mag well, and there it is. And this is the proper way that sits in the receiver. This loops over the hammer access pin and then sits in the receiver like this, and you can see now that you can see the spring tension that you get now, and so when that pin overrides that, it's sitting in there under spring tension like this, and now this pin can't walk back out of there. So that's the proper way. When we took Chrome Freak's gun apart the first time, don't ask me why, but the monkeys at Century had the hairpin sitting in here like this, and it was barely engaging the pin. This pin could have walked out of there and could have had a malfunction with the fire control group.
That's not very fair to Century.
Oh, too bad. So now that the hairpin's out, we have nothing holding the other pin in. So you see, I just press it with my finger, and I've already depressed it inside the receiver there. So I'm just going to get on it with the punch again, because unfortunately this hammer spring is really, it's a beast, and I need to get it started and then kind of work the hammer and push and keep everything as lined up as possible. We had a heck of a time with this last time. Mike really had to drive on this pin, but I'm just going to try and push and wiggle and see if I can get this side to pop free. See that hammer spring? It really wants to bind that pin up, and I'm having a problem getting that groove portion of the pin to pop free and clear of the hole in the receiver that it's made to come out of, and that's simply because that hammer spring is binding so much, putting so much pressure on it. And look at that, bam, there she just
It's just,
just
one of the
came
things
out.
you got to work with.
Exactly,
And it'll happen. It's not real difficult to do. It's just something that will drive you crazy.
And that was just hand pressure, guys. And all of a sudden, it was like the dam broke. It wanted to come out, and it came out.
When things line up, they'll come out.
Exactly. And that was all that was putting my thumb on that hammer and working that a little bit to find the proper position for that pin to come straight out. Now I just rotate the hammer sideways and pull it out, and there you go.
It's that simple. And you know what? We got a completely gutted receiver here, and a completely detailed strip AK74.
And for you folks, when you get this stuff, or you get a new parts kit or American Trigger Group, and this comes disassembled, that's just simply like that. And let me tell you, I screwed up 100 times. I mean, how do I put this back together? But we'll show you some tricks for making sure you get it right when we get that back together.
And other guys might take this down differently than we just did. It's really no right or wrong way to do it. I mean, the owner's manual might tell you to do one thing. We may have done it another. We've taken them down. It comes with experience. You're not going to hurt anything by doing it either way. So.
Yeah, I really agree with that, but I really think that starting, because of the configuration of the hairpin, it's starting with the trigger access pin first, and then working the hammer out of here. And let me tell you, okay, so everybody, benefits and lack of benefits of milled receiver guns. Milled receiver gun doesn't have this cross rivet right here for strength, so there's a little bit of more room to play in here. And getting this hammer back in a milled gun without the cross, it's a lot
real quick
lot
before
easier.
we end this video, and we'll be picking it up in part 2 with the reassembly. There's a replacement part for this spring.
Yes.
I'm going to let John explain that real quickly.
Yeah, I call this the hairpin. A couple of companies, Tapco and Power Custom, make something called a shepherd's crook. And oh my God, is it worth the $13 to $15 these things go for? It is a piece of metal that sits along the receiver sidewall in here, and it has a cutout at this end that slips over the hammer access pin, and another cutout in the center of it that fits over the trigger access pin, and then a hole in the top of the piece of sheet steel that lines up with the hole that the safety passes through. So once the safety passes through the shepherd's crook, it captures it and it pins it to the side of the receiver. It can't move, and so by it being in fixed position, it's now hanging on to the hammer access pin and the trigger access pin. And it is a lot easier to deal with than these hairpins sometimes. Simply remove your safety, and then the shepherd's crook will rotate up and out, and you're done. You don't have to be fiddling with pressing this or trying to pull this up. It's a lifesaver. I've got an extra. I was supposed to bring it for Chrome Freak when I came back from my trip home this last weekend, and I forgot it, so I apologize.
Okay, well, we'll show you that actually when we get the gun back. We're going to go ahead and end this, and we'll pick it up in part 2 with the reassembly, and hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you. If you have any comments or questions, please do not hesitate to ask. We really enjoy them. Thank you, and good night.